Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to the third official day of Guilds of Ravnica previews. We have a lot of cards to recap and analyze today, so I want to get started relatively quick. You can see by the title card, we're going to be looking at a new Planeswalker, Vraska, Golgari Queen. But real fast before we get started, just a reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here at the channel. One of which is our Patreon page, that's down there. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon. If you make any purchases on Amazon, once you go through that link, we'll get a small percentage, no matter what it is. And finally, Flipside Gaming, still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully you can save some cash while you support us. As always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to all the viewers. Y'all make the channel what it is. Thank you, and let's get into it. Disdainful Stroke. This one's a reprint. On your right, you're going to see the Chinese simplified version with brand new art, which actually looks awesome. On the left, we have a recent printing just for translation purposes. Now, this is a good card. It's going to be great for you in Limited if you're trying to be more controlling and methodical, or basically this will kind of feel like a blue removal spell for you in Limited many times. It only hits larger things, sure, but the larger things sometimes are the ones you got to worry about, the big bombs when you're playing Draft or Sealed. Aside from that, this card did see Standard play back in its day, and I do think it will see Standard play again, maybe out of the sideboard sometimes, but it will be in control decks in the future for sure. This next card comes to us from a Spanish language preview, and as always, we're kind of guessing a little bit on these names, so they might change, but we're going to go with Increase Altitude this time. 1 blue, it's a sorcery, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn, and it has Jumpstart. Is this a good card? In Limited, I think it's just fine for you. I'm not going to play it outside of Limited. I mean, it's a common, adjust expectations, right? But I am happy to see a Jumpstart card that is affordable and feels like it's just as economical as maybe a card like it in its past. So that's kind of nice. This is a good way to push across damage when you have those big dumb creatures that don't have trample, they don't have evasion. It's not always going to make my cut, sure, but in some decks I'll be happy to run this. Pass Wall Adept, a blue and 1 human wizard common 1/3, blue and 2, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So it is a wizard, but I don't think this is one of those wizards that's going to incorporate itself well into like the standard wizard deck or anything like that. This is something though that I will play in Limited and be really happy with it. This is one of those vehicles where your opponent has a decision to make. They either have to take the risk that you're going to get some stuff out, make it unblockable, and maybe even end the game at some point, or they gotta burn one of the removal spells on a silly little 1/3/2 drop. And sometimes that's just going to be what they might have to do. So with that being said, yeah, I play this a lot in Limited. I'm really happy with it. It's a pretty nice common pickup in Draft. Not a first pick necessarily, but maybe a relatively high to middle of the pack pick. And this is just a way to push that damage across and end games. You always want to make sure you have ways to end games in your Limited decks. This will be perfect in that capacity. Midnight Reaper. Black and 2, Zombie Knight rare 3/2. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, this deals 1 damage to you, and you draw a card. Alright, so this is not a bad card, actually. You look at this and you say, okay, it's no Dark Confidant, but they're never going to print Dark Confidant again in Standard. This is the type of card that we get instead. It's a 3/2 for 3. I'm usually really down on those type of cards because they trade in combat for 2 drops many times. But why do I like it this time around? It's really the creature type for me. Zombie Knight, those are 2 very relevant creature types going into this next Standard season. Zombie decks have been something people have been trying to make work for a while now, and it does feel like with rotation, enough zombies are sticking around, and now we're getting some other zombies as well, that definitely could be a deck that has some possibility, early on at least, in the meta. Another deck that was actually borderline last time around was Knights. Knights was a decent deck. It didn't always put up the huge results, but sometimes, even as recently as a few weeks ago, you saw one come in 10th place in a major tournament. So all of a sudden, if the Knights get more pieces like this, deck just gets a little bit better. For 3 mana, and considering those are very creature-focused decks, even though, yes, you're going to be running a lot of tokens in the zombie deck sometimes, and those aren't doing much for you here, but even still, when you lose creatures, especially in that Knight deck maybe, you're going to have them replaced, even if you do take a point of damage. I don't think that's too much of a drawback. Also worth noting, too, when this dies, you'll be able to replace it. So that's kind of nice. Even if it does trade down, you're replacing the card, so that's definitely not a bad thing. Yeah, I think this, believe it or not, does see Standard play. Now, if we were moving into a Standard where this was like the last set before rotation or something like that, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. But for this Standard, I think it has a lot of potential. Now, what about limited? You're going to be playing a lot of creatures typically in limited, and when they die, you're going to find value here. So yeah, I'm going to run this. This could be a first pick for me in some packs of draft as well. Here's another Spanish language preview, and this one's a mythic, Arclight Phoenix. Red and 3 Phoenix, flying haste 3/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you cast 3 or more instants and or sorceries this turn, you may return Arclight Phoenix from the graveyard to the battlefield. Alright, well, here's my issue with it. I realize Jumpstart is a thing, it exists, and that does make that ability a little easier. But 3 instants and or sorceries during the course of your turn before you get to the combat phase, actually? Yikes, I just think it's asking too much to bring it back. The card itself being a 3/2 flyer for 4 with haste is not horrible, just if it never came back. If you never use that ability, it's not a horrible creature to begin with. But it's definitely no Rekindling Phoenix. And that's the type of thing you have to think about when you're at least evaluating for standard. Are you going to play this over Phoenix? Are you even going to play this over Chain Whirler? Probably not. So I don't really see it making a splash in standard. However, in limited, it's good. It's mythic. You won't see it a lot. But again, just because it's a 3/2 flyer for 4 with haste, I'll play this and be really happy with it when it does show up. Call the Storm. Alright, this one is a common, another Spanish language preview. It's a red and 4 instant, and it will deal 5 damage to target creature. Yeah, this is limited removal. Not much more to say about it. I'll be happy to play this in Draft or Sealed. It could be a relatively high draft pick for me, as a matter of fact. However, in Standard, there's just better things out there. We already have some good removal spells like Vraska's Contempt, Lightning Strike, we just saw, Assassin's Trophy. Those are the type of removal spells you play in Standard. This one, you're going to be happy with it in Limited. Goblin Banneret. This costs a red. It's a Goblin Soldier uncommon with Mentor. Pay a red and 1 Goblin Banneret. Gets +2/+0 until end of turn. It's a 1/1. So I'm a little skeptical that this sees play in Standard, and here's why. It is a 1/1 for 1, and it is a card that you might think about putting in an aggressive build. But I think for that to happen, you need the Mentor kind of Boros aggressive deck to get there. And I don't know if that's the case right now. We have a lot more set to see, and that could change in the coming days. But at least for right now, I don't feel like that is going to be the aggro deck of choice based on what we've been looking at. With that being said, if the deck can get there, then yes, this might see some standard play. Or if eventually a Goblin deck gets there, then this could see standard play. But as for right now, I'm going to say probably not. I do like the fact that this has Mentor in that pump ability, so you're able to mentor some larger things potentially. However, without the toughness going up, it's just kind of a one-shot for me. Now, if I had another really good Mentor creature, for example, maybe I'm running that 2/2 First Striker that we saw the other day. I attack in with that and this. I pump this up 2. This maybe just trades with a creature, and then I get a +1/+1 counter on my First Striker. Now I have a 3/3 First Striker. Maybe that does 3 damage. Is that worth the 1 mana and the 2 pump? Yeah, maybe. Actually, that might be good enough as long as I can follow it up with another big play, another 2/2 Mentor First Striker or something like that. So if you look at it that way, yeah, so the deck can get there. The card's not bad considering the resources you're putting into it. In Limited, it's just fine. Again, if I am drafting that Boros build, I'll play this and I'll be happy with it. Again, it just might be a one-shot deal, but for just 1 mana and whatever I put in to pump it, I think that's just fine and can actually complement that deck rather well. If it can get by with its damage, it can take a big chunk out of an opponent's life total, so it's got that going for it too. Next we have Imminent Flame. This is another Spanish language preview. 2 red and 4 instant uncommon. The spell can't be countered, and it will deal 6 damage to any target. Let's talk standard first. Is this better than Banefire? I don't really think so. I mean, if you pay 6, you're getting 1 more point of damage than you would for paying 6 with Banefire. But Banefire gives you something this doesn't. That's flexibility. The ability to take out something smaller early on, something larger, or maybe even take out your opponent later on. This can go to the opponent for 6. It can take out Teferi. That's good too. But I don't see myself running this over Banefire, quite honestly. I just don't think it's going to be as versatile. So I don't think it gets there in Standard. But again, in Limited, I'll be really happy to play this. This one costs 6, a little more expensive, but 6 damage to any target is going to be great in that format. And also, the fact that it can't be countered will be relevant from time to time too. So another high pick there out of a draft pack for sure. Vivid Revival. This one comes to us from a Japanese language preview. It's a rare, green and 4 sorcery. Return up to 3 target multicolor cards from your graveyard to your hand and then exile this. Let's talk about Commander first. I could see myself playing it there because this doesn't say return up to 3 target multicolor creatures. It says cards. So I can pull a lot of different spells back from my graveyard to my hand. I do like that. Now, if they're permanents, they're not going into the battlefield or anything like that. You're not casting anything for free. But still, I do feel like for 5, there's enough value here that I'm fine with it. It's not for every build or anything like that. There's much more powerful cards in Commander than this one. But I could see myself running it maybe as a redundancy sometimes. In Limited, there's times where I play this. I mean, I don't want to necessarily push out a good 5-drop creature for this thing. But if I have a lot of multicolor spells and I don't have a lot of maybe draw spells or any draw spells in my deck, this kind of works sort of like a draw spell for you. So you want to make sure you're able to refresh your hands. This is a way to do that in some builds. Not all, but some. So I don't always see myself playing it or necessarily trying to pick it up in a draft, but many times it will do good work for you, I think. When it comes to Standard, unfortunately, I think it's a little too expensive, a little too conditional. You will have to be playing multicolor spells, number 1. Number 2, they'll have to be in your graveyard. Number 3, the cards go back to your hands. After you paid 5, you might not be able to play any of that turn, so you're kind of taking the turn off just to get your cards. That's not always fast enough at sorcery speed in that particular format. So don't really see it there, but ultimately, this card does have its place. It does have a role, just not in Standard. Golgari Finebroker, 2 black, 2 green, Elf Shaman. This is uncommon 3/4. When this enters the battlefield, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. I said this yesterday, but where are the flicker effects? They could be really good in this set. Anyway, yeah, this card's okay. Return target permanent to your hand. This will be good in Limited. It's a little weird that it's permanent. You can't take an instant or sorcery, I guess, but okay, it's still going to be fine for you. It's an elf. I mean, that's worth pointing out for Commander purposes. I could see myself playing this in Commander. It's just good enough, being able to grab something out of my graveyard. It's no Eternal Witness at the end of the day, so I don't see this showing up in Standard or anything like that. But it's a fine card, maybe a nice middle-of-the-pack draft pick or something along those lines. House Guildmage. Always happy to see Guildmages. A black and blue human wizard, uncommon, 2/2. You can pay a blue and 1 and tap. Target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Black and 2, surveil 2. Now, Guildmages traditionally have been very good limited cards, but many times they're a little too slow for Standard, and I think that's the case here. In Limited, this is a high draft pick, maybe first pickable in a lot of packs, even though it's an uncommon. Being able to keep a creature tapped down for just 2 mana and tapping this feels pretty good, but Surveil for a black and 2 and tap, Surveil 2, that could be extremely relevant. So for just 2 mana, 2/2, you're getting a lot of upside here, even though it is 2 different colors. This feels like it could be very, very good for you in Draft and Sealed. Molder Hulk, green, black, 7, fungus zombie, uncommon 6/6, undergrowth. This card costs 1 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. When this enters the battlefield, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Well, here's a potential upgrade for the Nature's Vengeance Commander 2018 deck if you're looking for one maybe. Other than that, I'm not real high on this card. I mean, Magical Christmas Land, I give this out super fast because of the undergrowth, but let's be realistic here. It still is 9 converted mana cost. I get 1 creature in my graveyard, now it's going to cost me 8. 2 creatures is going to cost me 7, 3 creatures 6. 3 creatures, let's talk Standard for a minute. Maybe that's realistic to have 3 creatures in my graveyard relatively early on in a game of Standard some of the time. If that's the case, I'm still paying 6 for a 6/6 creature that has no trample, no evasion. Yikes, it just doesn't feel good enough. I was mentioning early that zombies could be good, but it's kind of a nombo there because of the creature tokens that you're going to be playing a lot of times in zombie decks. So they're not going to the graveyard. They're not helping your undergrowth. This falls a little flat for me. I just think it's a little too slow. Maybe costed a little too high for it to be good. In Limited, though, I can play this. It might not be a high draft pick for me. Maybe it's middle of the pack. But if I have Surveil to back it up, or just by playing Magic, you know you're going to have a lot of creatures in your decks in Limited anyway. They're going to die as the game goes on. You might be able to play this at an economical cost at a point in the game where it could still matter having a 6/6. And that's sizable. You don't want to underestimate that. But again, without the evasion, it just doesn't feel great. But in Limited, it will be good. Very, very playable card there. Swarm Guildmage. Here's another one. Black and green Elf Shaman, uncommon 2/2. Pay a black and 4 and tap. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain menace until end of turn. Green 1 and tap, you gain 2 life. So much like other guild mages, yet again, I don't really see this in Standard. I think it's just a little too slow. I like the abilities a lot, as a matter of fact, but because you have to play this and then wait for it to come back around to your turn, it's a 2/2, so it's a little fragile. If it survives, then wonderful. Like, sometimes I would say maybe you could sideboard this in against an aggro or burn deck in Standard or something like that. but I just think the burn deck will blow it up so quick you won't even be able to gain the life, so I don't see it there. Again, in limited though, I'm happy to play this. That first ability could actually be game ending from time to time. Giving all your stuff menace and +1/+0 to get past a board stall could be amazing. And again, if you're building up to that point, just gaining 2 life here or there could be also very, very good. 2 life isn't all that exciting, but 4 life is interesting. 6 life starts to feel pretty good. 8 life is strong. So the longer this stays alive, the better it is for you. And your opponent has a decision to make. Again, at some point here, they might have to use one of the removal spells on a silly 2-drop because you're gaining too much life and you're building up to perhaps a win. And they might have to make that decision and it won't feel good. So this is another very good limited card, and it's an elf as well for maybe some commander builds. Alright, maybe the big card of the day, it's Vraska, Golgari Queen. Green, black, 2. Legendary Planeswalker Vraska, Mythic, 4 loyalty. +2. You may sacrifice another permanent. If you do, gain 1 life and draw a card. -3. Destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. -9. You get an emblem. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. You can see the emblem on the right side there. Alright, let's just cut to the big question. Is she good in Standard? I actually think she is. Here's why. She only costs 4, granted 2 different colors, but she comes in with 4 loyalty and a +2. And then that -3 is an abrupt decay. That is actually pretty significant just on its own. Remember, when you use the +2, you don't have to sacrifice a permanent to draw the card and gain the life. It's optional at that point. So you can still just get the 2 loyalty and sit on it and wait to abrupt decay something later on. And I think that's actually good enough. Much less later on when you have the ability to sack something, draw a card. Who knows, maybe in a zombie deck that would make sense. But wherever you decide to put this thing, this could be really solid. The loyalty that you're playing with here and the ability to abrupt decay from time to time is very significant. The -9 is actually interesting too, but I don't like to evaluate the Planeswalkers on their ultimates because it's going to be tough to get there. If you get there, it doesn't mean you win the game though, because if you're behind, that's not saving you. So I do find that unique, and I think that's interesting design, but it does make it feel like it's not something I'm going to put all my eggs in that basket or anything like that. Really, to me, this is all about the +2 and the -3, and I think it's actually very solid. Now in Limited, of course it's a bomb. Pick it up. You're going to love this card. It's going to do crazy work for you in a game of Sealed or Draft. It will be fantastic there. In Commander, yeah, there's better Planeswalkers, but this is still good. Again, if you can get to the -9, which I hate saying that because in Commander it's going to be even harder to get to the -9 because many people will be trying to stop you from doing that. But if you could get there, yeah, this is kind of bananas. But even if you don't get there, it's solid. Maybe not amazing in Commander like I think it would be in Standard, but it's still very solid. Split card with Expansion Explosion. These are both instants, and it's a rare. Expansion, 2 hybrid mana of the Izzet variety. Copy target instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less. You may choose new targets for the copy. We'll talk about that side first. For 2 mana, that's pretty good. If I'm playing maybe an aggressive spell deck with a lot of lightning strikes or something like that, I can fork that for just 2 mana. Yeah, that actually feels pretty economical. Every once in a while, my opponent might play a spell that I can copy, and I could have a gotcha moment there too. So the first side of the card's great. What about Explosion? 2 red, 2 blue, X instant. Explosion deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards. I'm going to compare this to an older card now. It's not as good as this older card, but it is at least a little reminiscent of Sphinx's Revelation. Now, Sphinx's I think is better because in a control build, I do think the life gain is a little bit stronger than the direct damage. Also, it's going to cost 1 less before you get to the X, and it's a little less strict on colors because this is 2 red and 2 blue. But consider that this is an X spell at instant speed that's going to let you draw cards. That could be very good. The direct damage will definitely play a role too, as long as this spell isn't countered. I mean, you can hit your opponent, you can hit a Planeswalker like Teferi, you can hit a problematic creature. So you have versatility there, but I'm really excited about this card because of the instant draw capacity that you could find here later in a game if you're in a control build. You also have expansion, so if you can't get to that point in the game, you're getting beat down too quickly, expansion could help you out and help you stabilize on the road to get to another copy of this card and hopefully later play Explosion. So I do think that we will see a Izzet or maybe more likely Jeskai control build show up in the next Standard. The big question is, will it be better than the Azorius control builds that we have been seeing? Adding a third color will maybe hurt consistency a little bit. However, we are getting shock lands, so hopefully it won't be too difficult to pull off. We had Esper control decks perform pretty well in the last meta. I don't see why Jeskai couldn't this time around. So I do think that it's something that we will see. Whether it sustains will be the big question going forward. So what about limited? I think it's good there too. Expansion may or may not be relevant in any given game. If you have some smaller instants and sorceries where you're able to maybe fork something occasionally, wonderful. Again, you could also sometimes get your opponent's stuff with this. The explosion, though, in limited, I think the direct damage is even more impactful. And also, of course, the card draw is a big deal. So, yeah, very good there as well. And I do think you'll see this in Commander too, because you'll have more mana at your disposal. So you can have some big turns with this potentially, much like Sphinxes. Boros Locket. We have a cycle of mana rocks based on the guilds in this particular set. So here's the Boros one we'll look at first. It costs 3. It's an artifact common. Tap for red or white. And you can pay 4 hybrid Boros colors to tap, sacrifice, and draw 2 cards. In limited, this is going to be a great cycle of cards because, again, it's going to help you maybe go 3 or 4 colors when that's necessary. Even if you're only in these 2 colors, it's still good. It's going to help you fix your colors early on, maybe ramp out a little bit. Later on, when you don't need that assistance anymore, you pay the 4, sack it, it replaces itself, and you dig a card deeper. That's actually pretty good. So I do think in a draft, these will go relatively high. Maybe not first or second pick all the time, but I would be surprised if these were wheeling a lot. I do think people will take advantage of this when they see it come around. So just keep that in mind when you're drafting. In standard, I don't really see them having a big impact. Maybe here or there they might show up, but I do think that for the most part, even though they are good mana rocks, 3 for a mana rock is asking a little bit too much in standard. And even though this is a good one with a good upside later on in the game, I feel like if you need this for the stability of your standard deck, you might not be in a good place to begin with. So this is more of a limited card for me, but a very good one. Let's look at the others in the cycle. Dimir Locket. Golgari Locket. Izzet Locket. And of course, Selesnya Locket. Another place where you're going to want to play these, Commander. I mean, mana rocks are always great in Commander, and being able to dig deeper in your deck later, I think is actually really awesome. Guildmages Forum. This is a land, it's a rare, you can tap for colorless mana, pay 1 and tap, add 1 mana of any color. If that mana is spent on a multicolored creature spell, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. First off, I'll say in standard, I don't really see this getting there just because I don't think it's economical enough. You have to pay the mana to get the mana of any color out. It's more like a filter land. The upside of getting a +1/+1 on a multicolored creature is okay, but it's not amazing. First, you have to be casting a multicolored creature, and then that +1/+1 counter has to be relevant, which it's not always going to be, honestly. So I don't think it's good enough there. There's just other ways to fix your mana that are going to be more economical. In limited, though, this is good for you. It's a rare. You won't see it all the time, but if you're trying to go 3rd color, 4th color, which is going to happen quite a bit in Ravnica, I think, then this will be a nice pickup for you. This is another one of those cards that you don't necessarily need right off the bat, but as you find yourself going deeper into the draft, you might look at this and say, wow, this is looking better and better. Now, aside from that, the +1/+1 counter with the multicolored creatures, it could be a little bit better in limited than it would be in standard. But again, you just have to make sure you have enough targets, which I don't think will be an issue when you're playing this particular set or anything like that. What about Commander? I think this could be fun maybe in an Atraxa +1/+1 counters matters decks just to jumpstart it a little bit. It's not super amazing, but could be interesting there. All right, with that being said, those are the cards for today. Tomorrow, we're going to be back with another video recapping and analyzing everything that happens in the next 24 hours. So until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.